Well, a bit too late with the support there. Guess I'll die.
As though I could stand idly by and watch that come to pass. Oh, but perhaps...
Alright, as a certified military tactician, I will for certain play on classic mode. Alright, cut the footage here and no one will ever know I play on casual. Fire Emblem Three Houses, the latest installment in the long-running turn-based tactical role-playing series, and marking the series' return to home console, even though the Switch is also a handheld. Set in the land of Fodland, where three kingdoms rule over the continent. Controlled by the Church of Seros at the heart of the land, you take on the role of Bailiff, our silent protagonist, an ordinary mercenary who one night responds to the call for aid from the three house leaders of the Officer Academy, and winds up becoming their new professor after flexing on some low-level bandits. I have just finished the Black Eagles route, and I have to say, this is the game Fire Emblem Fates should have been. It handles the multiple routes much better. There's actually 4 routes in the games rather than the suggested 3 from the title. And none of those are Pokemon Red and Blue buy the 2 games for the full experience sort of deal. However, from the season pass, it looks like there will be an additional story route added into the game at a later date. Estimated for next year, which I'll be looking forward to eagerly. Speaking of what also should have been this game, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, the Fire Emblem Shin Megami Tensei crossover that was received with multiple controversies. While I enjoyed that game for what it was, honestly, this game is a much better crossover of the two than TMS was. The school life aspects of the game feel very much like Persona. You knew it was always going to be a Persona crossover. While you take on the role of a professor rather than student.
That crosses a line, Professor! Singing? Me? Why would I be singing? I'd never be singing! I've never been so humiliated! Useless, worthless, unmarriageable!
I love the support conversations in this game. I feel like they're vastly improved from any other of the previous titles that I have played. They're much more fleshed out scenes, whereas I felt they were just short interactions in the previous games. These scenes do a lot more to really establish the characters and develop them, though it does take time before these developments show up in any of the story cutscenes. I do love how your class has a more active role in the stories rather than it just being left to the Lord and a couple of choice characters per chapter, though you won't see any of the optional recruits showing up in main cutscenes, which is to be expected. In between major story battles, your time will be split up into various different activities, from directing your class and lectures to your single day of free time a week, which during the time I spent playing this game was honestly a little too real for my liking. During free time, you will have a few options. You can wander around a monastery and take part in the various activities, accept quests from your class members and various NPCs. The NPCs always have relevant dialogue throughout the months. It really helps the world feel lived in when each NPC has dialogue relevant to the current events rather than just saying the same thing throughout the entire story. You can also take part in lectures during your free days, which gives you and your class an additional opportunity to improve your skills. Honestly, this option felt like, unless you were really aiming for min-maxing or underdeveloped, kind of unnecessary. I only used it probably about 3 times at most, so it does seem like a good tool for those who really need it. For my own playstyle, however, I felt it was actually pretty unnecessary. You can also use your free day to take part in supplementary battles and paralogue chapters. However, unlike in the more recent installments, you can't just indefinitely grind these out, as you will have a limited amount of battles you can partake in per free day, dependent on your professor rank. Even while playing on hard mode, I didn't really feel the need to grind, though I would have liked to have more opportunity to give my weaker students some much needed level ups. So having less opportunities for that kind of felt limiting. You have cutoff dates for completing paralogue chapters, though these cutoff dates are pretty fair, typically right before a major story point, so it didn't really make me feel rushed in completing them. However, playing on normal mode does give you free various battles that you can grind in.
Where's your motivation? Now I'm a little motivated.
Better next time.
At the start of your week, you'll be setting your lesson plan for your students. You can individually tutor them using your activity points determined by your professor level, set group tasks, and set your students' goals for the week. Whether you want them to boost their current skills, work on becoming a mage, teach them to ride horses, pegasi, or wyverns, it's all up to your personal preferences. Though if your student has other things in mind, they will come up to you at the beginning of the week and suggest different study goals. I do wish there was a little bit more to this rather than simply setting it on day one and letting it play out. It would also be nice if you can set more groups to more than just one task per week. Combat will be familiar to anyone who has played a Fire Emblem game before, with some new additions to keep things fresh. Battalions are a new addition that add a new layer to planning out your turns. Equipping various battalions to your characters will allow them to perform gambits, a new type of action to the Fire Emblem series. The type of gambit depends on your battalion, but from a large area of effect attack, to poisoning enemies, to swapping places with them, and even support type gambits to heal or boost your own team. Enemies attacked by a successful gambit will be left panicked, at which will lower their stats and leave them unable to move. One thing I didn't notice during my first playthrough until somebody else brought it up was that the weapon triangle was changed actually. It's no longer just built into the combat, but rather leveling up your skills with lances, swords, and axes will provide you with skills that provide you with the weapon triangle's benefit. There's also the new target indication. When you move your units within enemy range, it'll give you the target line to show you who the enemy will prioritize on their turn, which is really helpful when you want to not send people to their deaths or force them to retreat on casual mode. Which brings us to the Divine Pulse system. During your turn, you can press the ZL button and it will stop time and allow you to turn back to any moment on the current timeline. If you end up losing a unit, get a game over, it gives you an opportunity to try again from your preferred point rather than just trying to start over from scratch. Keep in mind though, repeating your actions using this will keep the results that happened before, so if you wish to change the future, act differently in the present. Demonic Beasts are a new addition to the enemy roster, and I am happy to see the return of monsters to this series. This isn't just a new enemy class to fight. When demonic beasts enter the field, they are an actual challenge to fight. You can't just send your strongest unit to intercept them. You'll have to make full use of all the tools at your disposal. Demonic beasts take up 4 spaces at least on the field, and they will have shields that you will need to take down before you're able to deal full damage to them. Well, they're a challenge until you get to know how to deal with them, but even then they're still a threat. But once multiple get introduced to the field, then it resumes its challenge from before. I don't have too many gripes with the game, story or gameplay wise. I was disappointed that there was no Manakete characters in this one, as those were always my favorite units to play as. Back in Awakening, I used to fill my front lines with Tiki, Morgan, Noe, and Naj, and just wreck the opposing army with my squad of dragons. Gender-locked classes are another thing I really don't like, especially since men outright have more classes available than women. If they at least had the same amount but just different specializations, I'd be more forgiving towards this, but this just outright takes away options and freedom in a way that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. One thing I will always miss from the Game Boy Advanced Fire Emblems was the over-the-top critical hit animations. While some of the animations for critical hits here do come close, I always want to see Swordmasters spinning around and splitting into 5 after images before releasing a barrage of slashes. Another issue I noticed was some of the cutscenes seemed choppier than others. Like, some of them just didn't have like enough frames in the animation, and it sort of gave this very jagged or stiff motion. And if it was an artistic style they were going for, that's fine and all, but some of the cutscenes definitely had more effort put into them that I found. Currently, I'm playing through the game on New Game Plus, working through my Golden Deer playthrough, and I love how it's handled in this game. You can use your renown, a currency gained from completing quests in battle, to purchase your old support conversations, skill ranks, your professor rank, and even the mastery skill for each class you have maxed out in the previous playthrough, allowing you to have a much easier time going through the game again and spend more time trying out new things through your playthrough without having to grind up as much. I really like this way of handling it rather than just letting me walk around at my previous level from the start. You also carry over your statue restoration progress, another use for your renown, so you don't need to pick and choose between recruiting everyone day one or repairing those statues again. Overall, I have to say, this is the best Fire Emblem game so far. Its story is amazing, its gameplay is familiar to a series veteran while keeping things fresh and also being accessible to newcomers. The music in this game is straight Fire Emblem. You know I had to. Everything about this game is fantastic and is a strong contender for my game of the year. Now, I will be making another video on this game sometime in the future after I've completed all other routes, which will definitely be a ways off, but I do have other videos planned before then. Until then, let's have a look at some of my alternate openings that I've thought of.
Disappeared from this world in the millennium since the fall of Nemesis, the King of Liberation. The Crest of Flames.
The Crest of Flames, you say? You could even call it the Fire Emblem. Oh, hell yeah, we're going 2 swords now. Oh no, why did you drop it? You know, I know this is Shin Megami Sensei, but there isn't enough room in this academy for 2 Kawakamis.